This is Sports 225 with Lee Feinswag. Sports 225 with Lee Feinswag is Baton Rouge's longest running and best television show. Who would have believed that?
My best friend, Lee Feinswag, look at the Christmas.
Sports 225 is brought to you by Breck. Remember, it all starts at Breck. Now, your host, Lee Feinswag.
It's easy now. It's easy stuff.
Yeah, it's good.
Well. On Sports 225 tonight, a guy who is in a conundrum, a quandary, all of the above, Ross Dellenger. He covers LSU football for The Advocate, and it's been way too long since we had him on as a guest. And I started out by teasing you, though, because, I mean, it's so hard, and I know this from personal experience from the old days, to be a beat writer in the middle of a coach search. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and then you just compile everything else that's happened. It seems like the last 3 or 4 weeks and going back to the summer, it's just been a crazy few months. But, I think the search is starting really slowly. Thank goodness they're not, ramping up and meeting with people in hotels. Or I don't think they are anyway, but you know how that works. So I think that'll come a little later, but yeah, it's been a crazy few weeks, man. I don't think I've ever experienced anything like it, in my career, 10, 11 years.
No, wait. You were the LSU football beat writer last Thanksgiving week as well.
Yeah, that's true too. Yes, I was. But man, the whole canceled game, and then before that, obviously, Les Miles getting fired, and man, it's just been two really big things back to back in a short span,
Well, as someone who has now spent more than half my life in Baton Rouge, when I first got here, Bill Arnsparger was the LSU football coach. And he left to go become the athletic director at Florida. And he was replaced by Mike, I'm blanking out on his name all of a sudden, I had it in my head, who was on staff. Is that terrible? Anyway, it'll come back to me. Yeah. But he didn't succeed. And he, in turn, was replaced by Curly Hallman, which was another one of those.
Mike Archer,
thank you. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, especially if it's mine. Archer was promoted from within. It was a popular choice, and everybody thought that was great. Hallman came from out of the blue. That was a big surprise, and a terrible, terrible hire. He was such a bad fit. He has Brett Favre to thank because he came back from a car wreck in August. Nobody thought he would play. Favre came back and played. They had some major upsets, a great season, and then he became the coach. Then, out of the blue, LSU hired Jerry DiNardo. Now, that was the first football coach search that I personally was on when I worked at the paper, and I actually got it. I actually got it right with them as they went.
Yeah.
But even still, that was somewhat of a surprise. And then nobody could believe that LSU had hired Nick Saban until he actually showed up that morning for the news conference, which was his first time on campus. He did not visit LSU before he came here.
Crazy.
And nobody had that story. Now, I will say, the night before, Ken Trahan, who's a TV, radio, website guy in New Orleans, broke that story. But everybody thought he was crazy.
Right.
And then, of course, when he left, LSU athletic director Skip Bertman hired Les Miles, which again was kind of almost an out of left field hire at the time. So this year, you have so many names being thrown out there. It's like, Casablanca. Major Strasser has been shot. Round up the usual suspects.
Yeah.
But it's not always the usual suspects.
No, it's not. And you look at the usual suspects right now. Guys like Tom Herman at Houston and Jimbo Fisher at Florida State. Those are two that seem to stick out more than anybody. I mean, I had an interview with LSU President F. King Alexander, and he mentioned Tom Herman in the interview, which was really bizarre last week. You got to think like those two are the guys, but I would take the field. I mean, I would take the field. I don't know. I just think it's a better chance of somebody else that maybe not a huge shock or surprise, but somebody that's not those 2 or 3 guys that you hear most about. And like you said, I don't know. I'm sure Les Miles was not in the usual suspects, and I'm guessing Nick Saban was not. I don't know how.
Saban's name never surfaced until the night before. Of course, there were the meetings going on. Joe Dean, the athletic director, met with Jimmy Sexton, his agent, in Memphis. Just like when you said before, you don't think they're in the hotel rooms. Well, the big thing is a lot of them, the agent and the athletic director or a representative of the university fly to like Dallas.
Right.
They both are inside security, okay, because they're going to connect back, and then they meet in a private room in the Dallas airport or in the Atlanta airport, and
Right.
that's where a lot of that stuff gets done.
Yeah. I went back and talked to Skip a couple years ago about the Les Miles search, and it was just incredible to hear the stories come out. You know, he was sharing stuff that he probably never had just because it, you know, was so long ago, I guess, at that point. And yeah, it was incredible to hear all the stuff. You know, meeting with Bobby Petrino and Jimbo and Houston Nutt and then the one story of who's the former Jacksonville Jaguars coach, Del Rio.
Jack Del Rio.
Del Rio never came in the restaurant to meet with them because he was on the phone in the parking lot of the restaurant in Florida. They met, like at some place in the middle of Florida or something, and he never even walked into the restaurant because he thought maybe it would void his contract with the Jaguars if he met. So he was on the phone with his agent in the car in the parking lot, and the board and the committee was inside this restaurant looking at him, and it's just bizarre. Some of the stories that come out of a coaching search, and I'm sure this one will produce its fair share.
I don't miss being you in these circumstances, but I do like following along at home. You can do that at theadvocate.com. Ross has written some really, really good stories since all the madness occurred a couple of weeks ago, including a really, really good look at Ed Ogeron. And, of course, he's on top of the coaching search. He's not doing it alone. Our friend Scott Rabelais and others are helping him, but you're like Atlas, dude.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, we got to take this break. He's Ross Dellenger. You can read his stuff at theadvocate.com. I'm Lee Feinswag, and you can watch me here on Sports 225.
Hi, I'm Joe Martin, president of ITI Technical College, and I really encourage you to come out to our 12-acre campus here on Airline Highway in Baton Rouge.
Contact ITI to enroll in our Construction Management Associate and Occupational Studies degree program. Learn to plan, coordinate, budget, and supervise construction projects and collaborate with engineers and architects in the residential, commercial, industrial, and heavy civil construction industry sectors. Call now about this new, exciting career degree. ITI Technical College. Begin your journey to a better life.
Back on Sports 225 with Ross Dellenger. He covers LSU football for The Advocate. And, what else are we going to talk about this time of year, especially with all the madness going on? But LSU football, little SEC football. Ross started at The Advocate about 4 games into the 2013 season, which in itself was kind of an unusual time.
Yeah.
But you weren't here during what, as it turned out, was the up escalator ride of Les Miles, and you've only been around for what was a slow, maybe down escalator for a guy who, I've maintained is going into the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. A lot of people around here will say that I started as it started to go down. The beginning of the end, or whatever you want to call it.
You sound like a Dellenger jinx.
Yeah. I mean, my first game covering the team, I had I think 4 games left in the 13th season when I started, and I think it was Alabama, at Alabama. And it ended up being just a really bad. I don't remember the score, but it was something like 31-14 or something. I mean, 38-14. I mean, it ended up being really bad. And a lot of people say that was kind of the beginning of the end. But they turned around, I think, after that game, and they really walloped Johnny Manziel and A&M. But yeah, it's been a crazy 3 years, and just gets crazier, lately. So
way before you got here, in 1986, LSU went to the Final Four in basketball. Dale Brown was the coach, and this was a team that started out with chicken pox early on in the season, and a bunch of them were wiped out. They lost a couple of players to academics. There was all the weirdness going on that I mentioned earlier with the athletic director, Bob Broadhead, and at the time, and there was a headline that was on Sports Illustrated, had a picture of Dale Brown. It said, "Crazy Days at LSU."
Oh, yeah.
And you might have seen that. Well, then in Inside as well, it said, "Hello, Trouble, I'm Dale Brown," was the headline. I've actually got that Sports Illustrated autograph to me from Dale. But, crazy days at LSU. And if you stick around long enough, every few years, there are crazy days at LSU.
Yeah, the last 2, I've compiled a list I'm keeping of last year and this year so far this season, and just how much crazy stuff happened. I mean, I didn't think that you could beat last season. I mean, last season was really something. But we're well on the way to topping the crazy stuff that happened just during the season last year. Starting with Cam Cameron's battle with prostate cancer and all that. That got the ball rolling, and it was just wild. Obviously ending with the drama in November with Les Miles' job. But I think we're going to eclipse last season's craziness this year.
Crazier days at LSU. So I wanted to ask you, because you and I have actually never spoken about this specifically. So Rab got the story originally. Scott Rabelais wrote the column where LSU was considering firing Les Miles. And of course, you were the beat writer, and there's always this kind of different fine line that you serve as the beat writer, because you're not the columnist, but yet you have to be in tune with all that's going on. And it was very possible that next week you could have been involved in a coach search, and it could have been happening. That would have ruined your off season like nobody's business. At least this way, maybe it'll get settled, in December.
Yeah.
But what was that like for you at the time, and what do you remember thinking?
I remember talking to Rab about it. We discussed how he should write it. He had this information. And he could have written it as a news story, honestly, but he decided to, and I was fine with it. He decided to shape it into a column, but it is interesting. It's an odd situation to be in for Rabby. He got this information from obviously a very good person, at the university, and you kind of had to decide how to write it, and I kind of just had to kind of sit by and watch. I didn't want to kind of touch that because it was just kind of not like hard news, So it's kind of a different situation to be in, and you don't want to. He can offer his opinion on it. I try to stay out of that realm and be kind of impartial and opinionless.
But in your own job, though, you had to be cognizant of covering a team where the coach.
Yeah.
You probably thought that Thanksgiving week that he was going to get fired.
Yeah. Monday of the week, I did. I thought it was probably 70-30 that he would get fired, maybe 80-20 or something. Mm-hmm. And then as the week went on, that dropped. In the percentages definitely dropped. By Wednesday night, I was like, well, this is maybe 60-40 fired. And by Friday, I was more like, this is a coin flip. And then when I left my house to go to the A&M game that Saturday, I had gotten enough information to know that he was not going to get fired, and so I wasn't good enough to write it, at that point. I wish I had now, but and they really made, I think they did make the decision.
Excuse me, a journalist who doesn't like just shoot from the hip and
yes,
tries to be first instead of right.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And I think they mostly made the decision before the game, but obviously we know now, during halftime is when they kind of really finalized the decision, talked to the board members and stuff like that. But, at halftime they were losing. So I think King Alexander especially, he didn't want to pull the trigger on firing Les. And through that week, that was a crazy week. And not as crazy as 2 weeks ago when the Auburn trip in a 15-hour span that will certainly be the craziest of my life, probably, maybe. I don't know.
That would be good for you, actually, if that was the craziest, because that means your personal life will have stayed intact.
Yeah.
All right, hold that thought. When we get back, we'll talk about exactly that and eventually touch on the LSU football team and maybe the SEC. He's Ross Dellenger. Read his stuff at theadvocate.com. It's Sports 225. Oh, hi. I was checking out Yelphi. I do it all the time, all day, because it brings me all the news I need to know in sports. I mean, I've got a customized news feed, real-time scores. It's integrated with Facebook and Twitter. You download it on iTunes, Yelphi, Y-E-L-L-F-Y. It's a great app and a fantastic Twitter feed. My wife goes, hey, all you do is make old man movies. We're back on Sports 225 talking LSU football with Ross Dellenger. He covers the Tigers for The Advocate, and we talked about right before we went to break about how the 2-week span in which Les Miles was fired and Orgeron took over, and the Florida game was, they say postponed, but I don't see how the hell they're going to play it.
No, I don't think so.
Let me say this about that, okay? As long as I can, because I can just imagine. I hope you had a nice time last Saturday and took the day off.
Oh, I did. Saturday and Sunday were great.
And they were beautiful.
Yeah.
But why in the world did Commissioner Greg Sankey from the SEC, and I wonder too what role the Florida governor had in all of this and influencing Florida to do whatever it did. I understand not playing that game Saturday, but why didn't anybody just simply come out and say the game will not be played Saturday, but the storm is supposed to hit Friday and should be gone by Saturday, and on Saturday we will make a call on when this game can be played, and if we can play it Sunday in Gainesville, we will play it Sunday in Gainesville. Now, I got a lot of problems with playing the game on a Monday because it means you shut down the University of Florida, just like you shut down any major campus. Why LSU has said they won't play a Thursday night game the way Mississippi State always does on campus, because it's just not right. I mean, it is an academic university. But why the hell they just didn't say, everybody just hold on and we will make the final decision after the storm goes through? Because if it's really not that bad and we can play it, let's play it Sunday.
Right.
And nobody seemed to have put that forth as an option. LSU, get on the plane Sunday, come over, and you play the game. You get off the plane, you warm up, you play.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, Joe Oliva told the SEC Commissioner Jeremy Foley that
And that was a great Freudian slip right there.
What
you
did I
said?
say?
SEC Commissioner Jeremy Foley,
yes,
who in fact is the athletic director at Florida. Who is I know Jeremy Foley a long time, and he's done a great job there. And I don't believe that there was any kind of conspiracy theory, but I think that the daddy figure in the whole thing should have been the SEC Commissioner.
Yeah.
And probably the Florida government should have had some influence on this. But go ahead.
Yeah, no,
so which did you mean? SEC Commissioner
Oh,
Greg
I was trying to
Sankey,
say
or
both of
athletic
them.
director? Yeah, right.
Sankey and Foley. Oliva told him, we'll come down there. We'll fly down, the fly in Sunday morning, so we don't have to take up any hotel rooms. Fly out Sunday night. Yeah. And they just didn't want to do it. From the commissioner's standpoint, I guess it was, this is too risky. What if it hits head on to Gainesville, and it's a disaster area there Sunday? I'm sure, Foley was singing the same thing.
Right.
I guess that's the reason that they didn't do it. But what boggles my mind is when they left the conversations, they did not decide on a postponement date. It's just like, well, we'll handle this at some point later. Like, well, when you make that decision, you probably need to find a date and get things organized where you're going to play on this date later in the year. And they didn't do that, and now they're kind of stuck. LSU's schedule is, it's tough.
And I wonder if you're the SEC and any major college now, if you shouldn't have a universal bye week that comes after the end of the regular season. The next weekend is free, and then you play your championship game because you don't play the BCS championship semifinals or the bowl games until a couple weeks after that anyway.
Yeah.
And this, let me say, if you believe the earth is angry, which I do, just look around at the weather we've had lately for the last couple of years, and a hurricane like this in October, and it's going to happen again. And hopefully Greg Sankey and other commissioners and people come up with a plan B, and having a universal bye week might be the way to go.
Yeah, I think this is certainly going to come up, at the spring meetings, and it probably came up yesterday. They had the SEC presidents all met in Atlanta. I'm sure it came up there too. But at the meetings in May down in Florida, I'm sure something will happen, because this is, LSU had the McNeese game canceled last year. I think another SEC team had another game canceled. Maybe it was Florida. And anyway, so and I think last year at the spring meetings, somebody told me that it was said that, hey, one of these days an SEC versus SEC game is going to get into weather trouble, and we're not going to have a solution. And lo and behold, a year later. So I think at the spring meetings you're going to see something arise where there's going to be a new policy, or a universal bye week or something like that.
Do you think this game gets played, or is it just there's no way?
I don't think so. And I was first told that it was canceled because LSU's side viewed it as a cancellation.
Right.
They didn't think it was going to get made up. And
the only solution is to move the SEC game back a week, the SEC championship game, and play it on that day. That pretty much seems to be the only way to go.
Yeah, that's it. They, Oliva had outlined a few possible dates, but he kind of eliminated all of them except that December 3rd. And other people have eliminated them, like the October 29th date. You'd have to move Georgia, Florida up a week. It would just be crazy, all the logistics of that. And LSU obviously does not want to lose its home game on November 19th. I don't blame it. A lot of money, and a lot of money for the area.
Yeah. He's Ross Dellenger, and we've spent all the time talking about the same thing pretty much, which I don't complain about because it's pretty interesting to me. I love the inside part of it for him, and then the scenarios. When we get back, we'll spend our remaining couple of minutes talking about LSU football and actual the games and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back.
It was nearly a decade ago that Brett teamed up to Imagine Your Parks, and you imagine big. 12 beautiful community parks from one end of the parish to the other, one family-sized water park, and 5 other parks just for your dogs. You have places to splash and places to explore. You have games to play and camps galore. No matter what you like to do or see, visit Breck.org and see how together we have made Breck better than imagined.
All right, coming down the home stretch of this Sports 225, of course, thanks to Ross Dellenger for being here, to John Williams from JCW Productions for directing the show. Go to jcwproductions.com for all your digital photography, video, all sorts of thing needs. Go to sports225.com for the listings to watch previous shows that are on the Sports 225 TV YouTube channel. And, of course, this show, which you may be watching there now because you don't have Cox, which you should, but you can also watch it on Cox 4 and CST. Whew. So who do you think's the coach, the next LSU coach? And I preface that by saying I would like to see Orgeron succeed and keep the job.
Yeah, you know, I feel the same way. He's been a joy to work with from a media perspective. He's opened up practices for the first time at LSU in 10 years, and he's really, you know, he's easy to reach if you need him, you know, which is pretty rare. I mean, I certainly never woke up in the morning to a text message from Les Miles, that's for sure. You know, and so Ed is he's been really good to work with, and obviously, you know, hopefully it would stay that way. But you know, Ed's trying to win the job, you know, and he needs to win everybody involved, including the media, and he's doing a good job of that. And I certainly wouldn't mind seeing him as coach, but you and Bob both know he's really got to go on a run for that to happen.
Well, he has 6 or 7 games left, and he has a bowl game. And what do you think LSU does in those? Let's just say it's 6 and they don't play the Florida game and then has a bowl game. What's your personal thoughts on those remaining games?
It's tough. You know, luckily for LSU, I guess they get possibly their hardest 2 at home. You know, I mean, it's probably arguable Ole Miss and A&M who's better, but you know, they get Ole Miss and Alabama at home, so that's certainly good. But man, that, you know, the last couple of years when LSU's played Arkansas after that Alabama game, the physical, emotion-filled game, they have really struggled. And that always, entering the season, always stuck out as the toughest game for them. But now you look at Texas A&M, and boy, they're on a roll, and you got to go to A&M on Thanksgiving night. That place is going to be rocking. You know, it could be for the SEC Western Division on the line. So it's tough. I mean, if he loses just 1 or even 2 over the last few games, it'll be impressive. I mean, honestly.
Well, in case I don't get you back here for 2 more years again, who do you think wins the national championship?
This year? I mean, gosh, it's so hard to not pick Alabama.
It really
you know?
is, yeah.
I mean, what they did, you know, last week and what they'll probably do this week, I mean, it's really hard not to pick them. I would go with them.
It's just amazing how they just keep not rebuilding but reloading and doing it with young players and just moving them around and having them play well. It's incredible. Hey, make sure you go read Ross's stuff at theadvocate.com. He's had some really good insight to both Ed Orgeron and Into the Search, and then his game stories and stuff are good. And just the fact that he admitted that he'd rather be right than first just warms my heart as an old crusty journalist. Ink-stained wretch. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for watching. This has been Sports 225.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish Town Mardi Gras, things can get blurry. See the mowers marching, prizes fill the sky. This Spanish Town Mardi Gras, may it never die. Poetry was everywhere, sweet music